Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and as the sun sets on another day, I felt the urge to make a video regarding a game I recently got around to that's been on my bucket list for quite some time. I want to share my thoughts on an RPG called Xenoblade Chronicles 1, the definitive edition that released on Switch not too many years ago. Now, this game has been on my backlog since it came out. My friend even sent me this physical copy as a present. Thanks, Ray. With Xenoblade 3 coming out, I wanted to ensure that it was a game I wanted to purchase, so I figured I should probably get around to playing this. Now, it took me a while, but having finished the base game at this point and working through the definitive edition's bonus story, Futures Connected, I'm ready to share some thoughts about the remastered RPG classic that people have been telling me I should play for quite some time. So first off, why did it take me so long to get to playing this? Well, back in 2017, I played through Xenoblade Chronicles 2 when it was released. Wow, it's been almost 5 years. Oh. Anyway, I nearly 100%ed the base game. I collected every blade, I beat every boss, I just didn't finish all the little upgrade paths that you could do for every character, if I didn't need to for a side quest. Now, I did make a video on that, and I gave it a middling review of like 7.5 or 8 out of 10, and that was me looking at things that I disliked about the game as objectively as possible, accepting that some of the issues that I had with the game, maybe somebody else could overlook and really enjoy it. You know, I think that's something we all do as, not just RPG fans, but, video game fans as a whole. However, my actual feelings towards that game were far more negative than a 7.5 makes it seem. I honestly didn't like almost anything about Xenoblade 2, minus the absolutely fantastic OST, some of the side quests which I thought were pretty well done, and a few of the grander set pieces which I felt were overshadowed by the Switch's inability to do them justice, whether it be frame rate on the full screen or the actual quality in handheld mode. So as to not drag this on, my point is, I was just in no rush to play Xenoblade 1. I didn't even play Torna, and I just wanted to wipe my hands clean of Xenoblade 2 as much as possible, even if everyone still tells me it's better than the base game. That being said, I wanted to judge Xenoblade 1 completely separately of 2, since I have made the mistake of playing later entries in an RPG franchise and never going back and trying the ones that people say are good. Unfortunately, Breath of Fire is the one that comes to mind. I rented Dragon Quarter as a kid, and, well, you can imagine why I didn't rush to play the first 4 games. So with that said, how did Xenoblade 1 end up stacking up against Xenoblade 2? Well, not even against it, just as an RPG. I gotta admit, I liked it. It absolutely has some flaws, but I liked it. First off, some easy positives to run through. Once again, killer soundtrack. Seriously, if you don't want to try these games, play them, didn't like them, whatever, just get the OSTs on their own. There's multiple composers. It gives great contrast to the sound, and honestly, I don't think any of the tracks really miss their mark. The graphics of the definitive edition were also a bit more pleasant on the eye, largely due to the overall performance of the game being smoother. It makes sense that years after Xenoblade 2 came out, they'd have a better grasp on the Switch's technology and how to make another grand-scale set-piece game and make it play more consistently. I think that's really reflected in the definitive edition. The story I felt was also solid, if not predictable at some times. The premise is that you're on this world covered by a boundless ocean, and these 2 giants are born one day, Bionis and Mechonis. They battle to the death, and from their corpses, life was born. The inhabitants of each went to war, and there you go. You're thrust into the lives of the people on Bionis, defending it from Mechonis invasion. This includes the use of a legendary sword, the Monado, that is particularly capable of harming the Mechons. It's a simply explained and action-packed precedent that any RPG fan will know is definitely hiding more beneath the surface. Plot twists were often unsurprising as the game seeds hints constantly throughout its narrative. That isn't to say there are no surprises, but more astute observers will figure out many of the twists and turns themselves before the game explicitly states them. My chat was frequently asking who had spoiled me when I would predict things correctly when they eventually came around. I think it's nice that they don't obscure important details in an attempt to bum rush the player with a massive twist, instead leaving important breadcrumbs in plain sight that you may or may not take particular note of. Now, the gameplay itself, the crux of any RPG, holds up okay by today's standards. You're given some basics, a skill tree, different skills themselves, or arts as they're called in the game, a hotbar of 8 actions to scroll between, you can outfit your characters, 8 hotbar slots for combat, and attempt to juggle enemy management in a style that's reminiscent of a single-player MMO. Skills that draw aggro, skills that heal and protect, and skills with high damage output need to be balanced to achieve victory. You form a party of 3 characters out of your roster and get to work. It's fine, but it certainly has a few hiccups. One catch is, you only control one character in combat, and the other two are AI controlled. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but the AI in this game is different per character, and it ranges from acceptable to outright frustrating. As much as sometimes I want to try out new characters or party setups, I'd often find I just had to make major concessions to play them, as the performance gap between myself and my AI allies was just too vast. The only respite I found was playing tank characters, as controlling aggro was by far the thing the AI struggled with most. It's unfortunate as all the characters are pretty different and mostly fun, but I felt pinned into 2 or 3 specific ones pretty much the whole time. This issue is exacerbated further because of the main protagonist, Shulk. See, he has the ability to wield Monado skills, which can be used to turn the tides of battle. He gets visions of the future mid-fight and can use the Monado to mitigate those attacks outright. While it's not mandatory to bring him and use this, the game certainly attempts to force your hand in that regard at many points, especially later on. It's a neat mechanic, but it shakes up the combat flow significantly, not really in a positive way, and during harder encounters, it feels like you're non-stop being shown these visions instead of just being allowed to play the fight. It also seriously pressures you to use Shulk because you'll still see the visions even if he's not in your party. So unless you have a deeper understanding of the gameplay systems, running other party compositions without him can be a little bit daunting. Fortunately, Shulk's AI actually does okay at the least, so even if he's in your party, you may not necessarily feel pressured to actually use him yourself. Additionally, the Monado's strength against Mechons is made frustrating early on when the only choice for damaging them is to use the Monado's enchant skill or to topple Mechons over, one of the game mechanics. It also can't harm people, so some sections of the game just get frustrating when you do or don't have the Monado present. Eventually, you find weapons capable of harming Mechon for other characters, but then you're almost forced to use them. The game never really finds a good balance with this, I feel. You can also initiate chain attacks, cycling through each character and giving them a free, uninterruptible turn. By using attacks of the same color, chains become stronger, increasing attack power as the chain continues. It functions well, though you do fall into a predictable rhythm with it for the most of the game. Granted, that's true of most RPGs combat, especially the super traditional turn-based ones, but that doesn't make it any better here. The tutorials to explain this stuff fortunately are brief and effective, only leaving some details out about how certain damage is calculated. I was just very appreciative that it didn't attempt to hold my hand, seemingly self-aware that its depth could be explained in just a few screens. I do wish the characters had more options or improved AI to help fix that trapped feeling I had with party comps, but it hardly stopped me from continuing and finishing the game. Progression of these characters is also mostly straightforward. You earn experience to level up your stats and AP to boost the power of your arts. You'll need to buy or find skill books to further enhance the levels, but the benefits are clearly explained. There are also weapon and armors that you can attach gems to. You can find or craft gems from raw materials. Let me tell you, it's so silly and RNG filled, but very entertaining to actually craft gems.
Hey, alrighty, to me, awesome, to you, to me, nice one, alrighty, to me, woo, to you, to me, alright, to you, to me, alright, to you, there we go, nice one, alrighty, there we go, alrighty, to me, woo, to you, there we go, woo.
The skill trees provide passive bonuses to a number of gameplay elements as well, and even allow you to pull some traits from your allies' skill trees. That is, if you've raised the affinity between these two characters. Affinity is the game's reputation system between the various characters, both in your party and out in the world, and it's far more complex than it needs to be. It's used in quest unlocks, dialogue choices, gameplay events, and even in determining how much of an ally's skill tree you can actually pull from. I felt that while it often wasn't intrusive to the game, the prospect of grinding affinity wasn't one I wanted to opt into, especially given how much time it could take without looking up some sort of affinity cheese online. I went into this completely blind, and I wasn't going to Google how to do something like this in a first playthrough. With that, you run around completing quests and discovering new areas. The game's main plot is pretty well paced, but the side quests are nothing but numerous and tedious. They're all the most basic MMO style side quests you can encounter. Kill 5 of this enemy, go collect this item, etc, etc. It's actually counterbalanced by the fact that the majority of the massive zones don't encourage exploration unless you're looking to do these side quests, so you do have some fun exploring. But given just how many side quests there are, like over 400, and their design is so uninspired, it doesn't help. Fortunately, they are optional, so you don't need to do them and you don't need to let them delay you from completing the story. But man, are you going to want to get rid of those exclamation marks. Overall, the age of the game definitely shows at times, even with the modernization and some quality of life things in the definitive edition. Apparently you couldn't track side quest objectives in the original, so thank goodness that's fixed, and that's far from the only thing here. But these are the kind of things that, quite frankly, we as RPG fans kind of just get used to and can often look past as long as the rest of the game is somewhat tantalizing, whether it be the story, the world, or elements of the gameplay that we do enjoy despite the elements we don't enjoy. And I felt like, at least for me, Definitive Edition wrapped that up well enough. So, I think I'm ready to give this one a grade. Not something I really like doing, but I did it for Xenoblade 2, so I think I owe it to Xenoblade 1. Now, I'm going to give Xenoblade Definitive Edition an 8 out of 10. Now, I know I gave Xenoblade 2 roughly the same score, but let me be very clear. That was me trying to objectively look at what I would score it, despite how much I didn't like many elements of the game. This is me scoring it based on my own personal preference. So, comparatively, it's like a 50 out of 10 compared to what I gave Xenoblade 2. Yeah, I really didn't like it that much. That's going to be a wrap. If you're curious if you should pick up Xenoblade 3, you probably want to give Xenoblade 1 at the very least a playthrough. Xenoblade 2, you might enjoy. I know plenty of people who do, and there's nothing wrong with enjoying it, but I'm also not going to sit here and tell you that you should play it. Although Xenoblade 3 does have one pretty important character from 2 in it, realistically, you probably want to play both. Either way, I'm going to try out Xenoblade 3, and I hope I like it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and you know what? When Xenoblade 3 comes out, we'll make a video. I'll make at least one. We'll see. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. And until then, take care.